Hello and welcome to my new technique video. Today it's all about brick stitch. I know that many of you dislike this stitch, and actually I don't really know why. It's a nice addition to peyote stitch because peyote stitch and brick stitch look alike. It's just the question of the position in your project where you need this, and so it's good to know brick stitch as a partner of peyote stitch. Brick stitch actually, as you can see, is peyote stitch turned by 90 degrees. So we are not adding the stitch, the beads in lines. We're adding the beads like the little stones in a brick wall. We start with a 2-bead peyote strip, as I would call it. So you see I had one red bead, and then I strung 2 brown beads, passed back through the red bead back in the other direction, and now I have my starting point for a little peyote row with 2 beads in the row. So I'm always just adding 1 row, pass through the sticking up bead of the previous row, and so on. Now I'm adding a red bead here going in the other direction. I would just proceed this way until my strip is long enough. You get the idea. It's a little bit loose, so you really have to hold your tail end to maintain the tension here in the very beginning. Now, you have a very nice, clean row of 2 beads peyote. And now we add our first brick stitch row on top. You see that every red bead here in the second row, in the top row, has 2 brown beads as neighbors. Now we string 2 brown beads, and then I will weave back down through the same red bead that I was exiting from. In this way, this red bead gets 2 brown neighbors on top. It's always, we start every brick stitch row with 2 beads, and then it's always 1 bead that we're adding. Now, the point is every bead in the top row has to be joined to 2 beads in the row below, because it's sitting in the middle of 2 beads. Now I'm weaving up through my second red bead, and I'm also weaving up through the second brown bead. In this way, the brown bead, the second brown bead from the right, is attached to the first 2 red beads below. Now I'm stringing 1 brown bead. I go down through the next red bead here, the second, and weave up through the third red bead and the brown bead that I just added. Now we string a new one. We weave through the third red bead again, the same that we were exiting before. And then we weave up through the 4th red bead and also through the brown bead we just added. So always make sure that every new bead is attached to both of the 2 beads below that it was exiting from, or that it was added on top. Not exiting from, that's wrong. Okay. Yeah, but you get the idea. This is one technique. I will later show you another technique to make brick stitch, but that's the technique that I prefer because it really gives me the idea of the anatomy of that stitch, that every bead on top will always be joined to both beads below. See, I'm adding, exiting here at the end. I'm adding my last bead, and I added my last bead so that 1 bead is a little bit sticking out because that was the same like the row below. Now I have to see where my next 2 beads will be lying on, and the 2 beads will be lying on top of the second brown bead here from the end. So I will exit from the second brown bead to start my next row. I'm stringing both red beads, pass back down through the bead that I was exiting from, and have them on top. Now both beads need to be attached left and right to the adjacent bead because they are just attached to the bead in the middle. So I'm just going up through the next brown bead here and also up through the red bead, and then I will go down through the left red bead again and weave down through the left bead here of the at the brown bead row, the last bead in that row. Now everything is attached, and now I'm just weaving forward to exit from the bead where I start my next brick stitch unit. Just make sure that everything is joined. The good thing is in peyote, as you can see, it's easy to make a turn. Just go up to the neighbor bead and so on. And you see here, I just proceed with my row. So it's very, very easy to make a turn in peyote when you go down, and then you can go up again, and then you can go diagonally to the starting point where you want to exit. That is very easy to do. Now I'm coming to the end of this row, and here it's very easy. This is just my last bead that I added, and everything is snuggling up. Now I'll show you the second version. So it starts in the same way. When I'm adding my first pair of beads, I have to go through the bead below. And here the start is a little bit easier because the right bead is sticking out. There is no other neighbor, so I can just weave up through my second bead to the left new bead here and fix it to the red bead below, to the second red bead below. And now I string one bead, and I'm not going down through the beads, but I'm passing below the thread that is on top of the two beads that I want to join my new bead to. So I'm not passing through beads here. I'm just weaving below that thread of the row below. So attach it to the thread and then weave up to the bead you just added. This technique is, maybe it's a little bit easier, maybe it's even a little bit faster, but I prefer the other version. It's up to you which one you do. It doesn't really make a big difference in the finished piece. To me, it's just easier to understand the anatomy of the stitch when I'm weaving through the beads below, because that gives me just a better understanding. And in the beginning of the row, you need to do that anyway. You have to go through the beads below because there is not always a thread that you can attach a bead to. See here, that's my last bead. And now I just have to find my right starting spot to start the next row, which is my second bead here, as I want to have a straight edge here on the side. Of course, the straight edge in a brick stitch means, just as you know from peyote, every second bead is sticking out. Just bend it a little bit to get an understanding. It's a little bit like in peyote stitch. Maybe it's a little bit looser. It's a bit more flexible in that direction. In the long line, it's the same flexibility as you know from peyote stitch. So one direction of the in one direction your fabric, your beaded fabric, is a bit more sturdy, and in the other direction it's easy to roll it up. Now I'm showing you how to make a decrease here, and nothing is easier in brick stitch. You just move your starting point over into the row where you want to continue. So you just go over a little bit, make a turn through your beads, and then you start your new row in another place. Also here, don't forget to attach it properly. And you see, for my turn, I just go even a row below to get to a good starting point for or to exit where I want to exit. So just make a turn through your beads. That's easy to do. Now we continue with this row, and I will end this row a little earlier, of course. Again, so I have my decrease on either end. And now I want to show you a little increase. This is also very easy in brick stitch. I just make my first starting unit here, but if I want to make an increase of more than that half bead on that end, here's what I do. If you want to have a second additional bead there, first I attach my beads properly of the first unit. Of course, so I'm exiting from the second red bead here. I'm weaving up through my second or through the left brown bead as well. And then I go back down through the right hand bead here on my end. And now I just string one bead and pass back through the bead that I was exiting from. In this way, there's just another bead lying next to my brown bead. And then I'm zigzagging back to the left position to continue my row, and you will see when I'm making my next row, everything is snuggling up nicely. So you see, you could even add 10 beads in a row here for your next row. So it's very easy with brick stitch to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever number of beads you like to either end or to make it shorter on the end. So that's why brick stitch is such a great stitch for these, if you like, two-dimensional pictures, flowers, whatever, with peyote looking like pictures, peyote looking like designs, and you have these marvelous edges for leaves and fishes and tails of fishes and so on. So there's a lot that you can do with this stitch, because it's easy to increase or decrease a row in a row at the end. So you see, I'm adding my additional bead here on the other end as well, and then I keep going with my classical brick stitch on top of this row, and I can just use the beads of the row below as I was using the other rows below. Whether there's another row under that or not, that doesn't matter. So you can just continue, and you see how this is just joining the rest of the base nicely. And here we go. Now I will also show you how to make brick stitch in rounds. That's just the same stitch. So I start with my peyote strip here with the 2 beads peyote strip as my starting row. I zip the ends and together just reinforce that starting spot to not lose your attention at that point. It's a little bit loose, especially when you're working with size 8 beads, as I'm doing here. Now you start the first position again with your 2 beads. Every brick stitch row always starts with this pair of beads. It's not working otherwise. And then you just do the exact same stitch as you were doing in the straight line. The only thing that you have to pay attention to when you make your brick stitch round, you see that I was not additionally attaching the left hand bead here, because I will do that at the end of the round. That's when you close the round. But otherwise, you see, I'm just doing normal brick stitch. I'm just adding 1 bead after the other in the round, as if I would be working in a straight line. There's no difference. It's just the end of the round when you're closing the round that you will join the 2 last beads. The point is, a brick stitch is not really suitable, as I said in the beginning, for bangles. A brick stitch is the tubes will be collapsing, so it's not just holding the tension. And otherwise, if you really fill it so that the tubes are not collapsing, then they're not flexible enough to really work as a collar or as a bangle. But you can make nice tubes, and in another video I will show you how to make increases in brick stitch in the center part or in a round, so that you can create little beaded beads. And here, that's the closure of the round. You see, I'm just passing down through my very first bead, and in this way I join the very first bead not only to the previous one in this round, but also to the one of the row below where I forgot, but where I didn't attach it in the very beginning of the round. So very, very simple to do. So no fear for brick stitch anymore. It is really a very easy stitch to make. Just always think like your brick wall, and always make sure that the new beads that you're attaching will always be attached to the left and right bead below, because they are sitting in the middle of the gap between 2 adjacent beads in the previous round. So make sure that every bead is always attached to both partners. Once going down, you see it's attaching to the left bead here, and then going up, it's attaching to the right bead. That's all you do, or the other way around, depending on your beading direction. But that's all you do in brick stitch. So absolutely no reason to hate this stitch. It's a very, very, very nice stitch, and a very versatile stitch to model things, to make 3-dimensional pieces, to make 2-dimensional shapes, flat shapes where the outline is a little bit more versatile. So Great stitch. I hope I infected you a little bit with a love for this stitch, and see you next time. Bye bye.